Well, good evening, you guys. We've got some more people trickling in, so get registered, get your raffle tickets, all that kind of stuff. Find a seat as you come in. My name is Sarah, and this is American Pacific Mortgage. This is our home. My husband Greg is over here in the blue shirt. You'll be hearing from him here in a few minutes as well. But thank you so much for being out here tonight. A couple just housekeeping things. We are low key around here, so if you need a refill on your beverage or need some more tasty treats from Santa Cruz Market, just help yourself. The bathroom is going to be out this main way, back around behind you, directly behind that hallway. So help yourself if you need to use the restroom, and make sure you stick around to the end because we've got a couple raffle prizes for you guys for coming out tonight. We want to make sure that we are out of here on time. So I said 5:40 and I was up here at 5:40. We want to make sure that you guys are home and on your way for the rest of your evening. But tonight was really inspired and prompted by a new program that's going to be released here in the city of Ventura. I need to turn the music off. And it's going to be a streamlined program for the ADUs that you can petition for, or not a petition for, apply for through the city. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But the toolkit workshop that we have tonight is more than just talking about that process. It's going to be an all-encompassing talk tonight. You're going to hear from 4 different speakers tonight. We'll hear a little bit from them for about 20 minutes each, and we're going to keep it really high level and concise as possible. There's so many things that they could talk about. They could all have their own presentations, and so what we're going to do is we're going to give you high level information, write down any questions you have. At the very end of the presentation, we're going to have some Q&A time for you to be able to ask those questions of them, and we want to keep those more general and broad, right? There's many of you here tonight, and you all have different scenarios, and so we want to keep those questions for the group a little bit more high level, and then those specific questions you're going to ask and talk with them, okay? So tonight, we want to make sure we get right on time. Our first speaker is Arturo Hernandez, and he is the co-owner of Central Coast ADU, which is an ADU development expert and housing advocate in Ventura. He is a recognized speaker on ADUs, appearing on KVTEA radio and presenting at organizations like the Ventura County Community Development Corporation, Housing Opportunities Made Easier, and the Ventura County Coastal Association of Realtors. Additionally, he serves as a student mentor, having established a partnership with the Ventura College Architecture Department, the VC Architecture Club, and the VC Engineering Department. Arturo has led Central Coast ADU in developing over 30 ADUs across Ventura County in the last year alone. He's a busy fella, and he's here tonight to share with you guys some awesome information about ADUs and what they mean. So without any further ado, welcome Arturo.
Thank you. All right, so I've got a lot to cover today. This is a presentation that's adapted from an hour-long presentation. So I'm going to move through it pretty quickly. I am providing a QR code for this slideshow, though. So you're able to pull it up on your phone, because some of these slides I'm just basically going to breeze by. And then it'll give you an opportunity to look it up on your own time later on. And of course, you'll have an opportunity to find our website. I got my cards and our brochure over on the table over here. So you can always follow up with any other questions that come up after the fact today. So let's go ahead and get started. My presentation is what is an ADU? There we go. Okay, I actually think that we skipped a couple. It's moving a little slow here. Sorry, the clicker's going a little bit slow. Okay, so we'll start here. Number one, we're going to have an overview of ADU basics. I'm going to talk about the legal and regulatory framework, and we're going to get into the development process. And even though I got Q&A here, we are going to be saving questions for the very end. So once we get there, keep them in mind, and I'll be happy to answer them at that time. Okay, so ADU basics. So for starters, why build an ADU or a junior ADU? And I'm going to get a little bit into junior ADUs, although the focus is on ADUs. And I'm going to go ahead and just hold this because I feel like I can't get it high enough there. So why build an ADU? So for starters, housing for families is a very popular option for our clients. Elderly family members that can maybe not live on their own anymore, or they're getting close to not being able to live on their own. You can bring them over to your property and they can have their own individual space. Young adult family members, we all know Ventura County is very expensive to live in, and it's tough these days to be able to afford just to buy a second house. So it's cheaper actually to build an ADU on your property and bring your young adult children to come live. Visiting guests is popular as well. Believe it or not, we have some clients that don't keep their ADUs full-time occupied. They just have them there in case they have guests that come into town. And another option is for caretakers. For our elderly community members, they will build an ADU for their caretaker to live in full-time. And, they're very close. They don't have to travel, back and forth. And we have clients that are using them as multifunctional spaces. And so it could be any of those options above. But we've got clients that are using them for just office spaces, and it doubles as a guest house, maybe when their parents are in town. So there's lots of opportunities for housing for family. Of course, income, rental of the ADU or JADU, lots of opportunities for that, whether you're doing it as, a short-term lease, a longer-term lease, or even things like in certain areas. And I'm not 100% on the rules for Ventura, but doing an Airbnb type thing. And value, increase in property value. So some definitions briefly. What is an ADU? ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit, and that is a residential unit on a permanent foundation that provides additional housing on an existing legal lot with the primary dwelling. And that's got to include a private entrance. It's got to include a sleeping area, a kitchen, and a bathroom. And then just again to touch on JADUs real quick, that is a junior accessory dwelling unit. And that is an attached unit of no more than 500 square feet contained entirely within existing square footage of the primary dwelling. That has to include a private entrance, a sleeping area, and a kitchen, and it may or may not include a bathroom. But if it does not include a bathroom, then there's got to be an access door in between the JADU and the house so they can get to a bathroom. Okay, so just to briefly run through some of the different kinds of ADUs. Attached ADUs, the state definition is an ADU that is attached to the primary structure. One of the big pros for that is that it maximizes usable space in smaller yards. So sometimes we've got clients that have very thin backyards, and they'll tell me, I want to do a detached ADU, this much square footage, whatever they have in mind, and I'll get on site and I'll see, oh, they got a really tiny backyard. So for somebody like that, an attached would be better. Cons for an attached ADU are that you have to share your wall with the primary dwelling. There is closer proximity between the main house and the attached ADU, and that will require custom plans. And so we're here today to learn about the pre-approved plans, and they're all detached because that's going to be something that doesn't necessarily have to be too customized to individual properties, but every house is different, so every attached ADU is going to be different. Detached ADUs. That is an ADU that is separated from the primary structure. The pros on that are more privacy. It's a more desirable rental because of the privacy, and pre-approved plans are soon to be available here in Ventura. Cons will be that there are separation requirements between structures, so between the main house and the ADU, which means it could result in you having a smaller ADU because you're losing that space in between. And also because you're having to put it farther away from your house, you're going to lose more yard space. Converting existing non-habitable space. So very popularly, they're garage conversions, but not just garage conversions. They could be workshops, sheds, different things. A definition would be a non-habitable space on the lot of the primary residence that is converted into an independent living unit, and it may be attached or detached. The pros will be that they allow for utilization of existing garage and storage utility spaces for housing and monetization, and they minimize the loss of open property space. So you're not taking up your backyard to do something like this necessarily. Cons will be that you are losing that storage space, so no more parking the car in the garage, no more storing stuff in your garage. And this is kind of surprising to a lot of people, but the cost of retrofitting an existing garage or other non-habitable space is very often nearly as expensive as doing a new construction ADU. And, a lot of people believe, we've got a garage, it's got four walls, it's got a roof, and how expensive could it be? Well, you got to retrofit the foundation, you got to retrofit the roof framing. There's a lot of considerations and expenses that still go into a garage conversion. And a garage conversion or other non-habitable space very likely is going to require some custom plans. Okay, so converting existing habitable space. This is legal habitable space on the lot of the primary residence that is converted to an independent living unit. So an example of this, kind of like the picture illustrates over there, we've got clients with properties that have two primary suites, and they say, well, I'm not using the second one, I want to convert it into its own separate unit. And we've got other clients that, they'll have a whole second story. They say that's just going to be the main house now, and the bottom floor is going to be the ADU. So this provides some good options to do that, especially because it's one of the easiest and cheapest ways to do that, to create an ADU, because it's already a habitable space. So it's already going to be built up to a certain standard. You're able to then maximize utilization of underutilized spaces and minimize loss of open property space. These are really ideal for junior ADUs because they are within, typically within the footprint of your main residence. And of course, the cons, you're going to lose space of your main residence, and it's not necessarily a practical option for live-in property owners. You're going to have people really, really close to you if you're renting it out. And this would require some custom plans. So I am going to talk briefly about junior ADUs here. Every property that's zoned for residential use is allowed a junior ADU if it's zoned for basically a single family dwelling. So they're not allowed on multifamily lots. Multifamily lots are only for ADUs. A junior ADU can only be a max of 500 square feet, and they have to be built within existing footprints of the main dwelling. So you can't just build a new construction ADU that's attached to the house. Generally speaking, and for sure in Ventura, it's got to be within the existing square footage. Owner occupancy requirements. There are some areas, for example, Oxnard, where there is no owner occupancy requirement if you build a junior ADU. But in Ventura, they're going to make you sign that say, if you build a junior ADU, you have to live in the house or in the junior ADU. You can't just move off property and rent everything out. And like I mentioned before, you can share bathroom facilities between a junior ADU and your main house. And these last 2 points are kind of important because they make a big difference in the cost. So you can share utility lines between a junior ADU and the main house, where you can just kind of tap into what's existing in the main house, as opposed to creating whole new trenches to your utility meters. And also with junior ADUs, generally speaking, fire separations are not required for any common walls. So if you have an attached garage, for example, and you're going to convert it to a junior ADU, that connecting wall has to be fire rated if it's an ADU. But if it's a junior ADU, that doesn't necessarily have to be fire rated. Okay, and I do want to touch briefly on multifamily zoning because we're starting to see more clients that have multifamily zone properties that want to build more than one ADU. So again, junior ADUs are not allowed in multifamily zone properties. So you can create one ADU out of existing non-habitable structures for every 4 existing units. So examples of non-habitable spaces are like garages and carports are really popular. So if you have, big carport for maybe 2, 3, 4 cars, and then you've got a complex that has 4 apartment units, those are your 4 existing units. You can create one ADU out of your carport. All 4 of those spaces can be one ADU. Now, say you have an 8-unit apartment complex, you can you can take that carport and turn it into 2 ADUs, kind of split it down the middle. And so that would be like 1 for every 4. Additionally, so on top of that rule there for creating it out of existing non-habitable structures, you can also add 2 detached ADUs to your property if it's multifamily zoned. And you can actually add up to 8 detached ADUs, depending on how many existing units you have. So we've got some clients that are really maximizing their returns on their properties by basically maxing out how many units they can have there utilizing ADUs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the definition of roles when it comes to ADU design. For starters, the architectural designer is going to be the person that is kind of the ringleader of your project. They kind of tied together all of these different parties that have to happen. And that's where your plans are going to start, with the architectural designer. Once the architectural design is done, it goes to a structural engineer who is going to basically engineer the foundation and the framing. And then you also got to get your energy calculations done by an energy consultant, and that kind of dictates what kind of materials you're going to use, what grade of appliances you can use. And so that's going to kind of be set in stone. You can't just go out and say, well, I'm going to go buy this water heater. That's going to be set in stone once you get through this process. Now, I do want to mention, since we're here for talking about the pre-approved ADUs, once these are out and ready to be used, these 3 roles right here are going to be done. So those boxes will all be checked off, because those free to use ADU plans will have all that stuff done already. So that's a big chunk of work and expense that you wouldn't have to deal with. Now, some other things that might come up, though, are you may need a geotechnical engineer, particularly here in Ventura, for soil studies, depending on where your property is located. And you may also need a surveyor, depending on if you've got a hillside property, or if you've got a property that has kind of irregular property lines, where we're really trying to, if you're trying to build something that's really close to those irregular property lines, we got to know exactly where we're at, because we can't do any guessing games. We're really strict about how far they have to be from those lines. MEP engineer occasionally comes up, not too often, but those are engineers that will do your mechanical, your electrical, and your plumbing plans. Most of that is already going to be included in the pre-approved ADU plans. And just to kind of touch a little bit more on geotechnical engineers and surveyors, they're both going to be state licensed professionals. The geotechnical engineer, like I mentioned, they do soil testing and reports. When you will need them is if you are building a structure that's over 1,000 square feet. Oh, I'm sorry, 1,000 square feet or more. If your property is in a liquefaction hazard zone, a fault zone, or if you have a septic system, which is not too many, but they come up every so often, then you're probably going to need to upgrade your septic system or add a secondary one. And then I kind of mentioned about the surveyor, property line surveys and topographic surveys for figuring the heights on your property. So I'm going to kind of run through a couple of these slides here, just to kind of touch on how state versus local law works. So prior to 2020, the individual jurisdictions had, their own ordinances on how they developed, how ADUs were to be developed, and they were pretty restrictive. So in 2020, there were some new ADU laws that came into place, and once those were enacted, it basically standardized how ADUs had to be approved throughout the state, and it made it a lot easier for property owners to develop their ADUs. So as a result, a lot of the local ordinances kind of went out the window because the state ones now override it. So things like parking requirements, zoning limitations, lot coverage limits were kind of common locally even. Those things generally don't apply anymore. In some cases they do, but in most cases they don't. Yeah, like I said, a lot of the older stuff got overridden. So if you leave here today with one thing that you remember, I want you to remember about statewide exemption ADUs. So these are ADUs that are up to 800 square feet, 16 feet in height, 4-foot side and rear setbacks, and no lot coverage or minimum lot size regulations. So this is a state mandate that every property owner with a residential zone property is able to build an ADU. So nobody can tell you no about this. They can tell you designed it wrong. They can tell you got to, move this way. They can tell you a lot of different things, but they can't flat out say you can't build an ADU as long as it meets these guidelines. Beyond the statewide exemption ADU, there are some other guidelines that kind of protect the property owner into being able to develop ADUs. So if you're going to do one that's a little bit bigger, or the setbacks are a little bit different, these are some additional guidance. And so that's one of the slides I'm kind of just going to skip over here, but that's available. And there's just a couple of key numbers here that I want you to be aware of. The first one is 500 square feet. So I mentioned that is the maximum size for a junior ADU. But this is also the size at which once you exceed 500 square feet, school districts can come in and say, we're going to start to charge you per square foot for your ADU, and they're going to have their own fee. So we have clients that say, well, let's stop at 500 because I don't want to pay school fees. And similarly, 750 square feet, once you go above 749, that's where the city will start to charge you per square foot. And when I say per square foot, that doesn't mean, I'm doing 750, so they're only going to charge me for 1 square foot because I went over 749. They're going to go all the way back to the first square foot and charge you for every single one. So sometimes this can double your permit fees. So we have a lot of clients that stop at 749 or 740 because they're trying to minimize the amount of permit fees that they pay. These impact fees that I'm talking about, whether they're for the school or for the city, they're just one-time fees. So it's not you're paying those, monthly or yearly. Go ahead and skip to the next. Okay, unpermitted work, I want to touch on just briefly. We have people that get caught all the time. They come to us and say, I need to legalize this. Maybe you wouldn't be surprised that it happens pretty frequently, but somebody's going to have to deal with it eventually. Any kind of unpermitted work, people are going to have to deal with it, whether it's yourself when you get caught, when you go to sell the property, you're going to have to disclose it. It could affect your buyer's attitude about whether they want to take it or a lower asking price. Your heirs might have to deal with it if you pass on and it's still unpermitted and they find out, hey, this was never permitted. Now I got to deal with it. Municipalities are punitive. Your permits are going to cost more and they're going to have additional hoops to jump through. Not to mention there's huge liability risk, loss of home insurance or lawsuits. All right. This is just kind of a general overview, very kind of simple, going through the process. We can go ahead and skip over this. And this is something that I want you on your own time, if you're able to, take a look at this. It's basically how to self-assess your property for a detached ADU. And it'll tell you about the setbacks, any utility easements you have in the back if you got power lines, and building separation distances. Okay, this is kind of key here. So I'm running close to my time here, but I do want to go through this. These numbers are based on what we see for our clients, taking them through our process and specific to Ventura County. So your pre-construction process is going to cost you anywhere from $17,000 to $25,000. And what that's going to include is your architectural plans, no matter who does them, your structural engineering, Title 24 report for your energy calculations, your application costs with the city, and your permit costs. Now, I do want to note with the pre-approved ADU plans that are being put forth, these first 3 bullet points are basically eliminated. So you can kind of calculate that's how much you're going to be saving. You're still, and somebody's going to speak about maybe application costs. I don't think they've completely worked it out yet, but application costs and permit fees, you're still going to have to pay. I'm not sure how that's going to work with the pre-approved plans yet. And in construction, it can be anywhere. You can find a contractor that'll do your same design for 400 per square foot, and a contractor will do the same plans for 200 a square foot. To get that good price, you need a referral, and that's all I can tell you about that. And I'm kind of wrapping up here. I just wanted to briefly note what a pleasure it's been for us to be able to work not only with WCDC, but also with the Ventura College students that were selected to have their designs created into full plans for this program. And so we did have students that were selected from the architecture department. They received one-on-one mentorship by us to develop their ADU designs. And they themselves have put in, we're kind of guessing here, but it's got to be at least 40 plus volunteer hours by the students for this project. Altogether with my in-house design team and with the students, we've got at least 100 plus volunteer hours to create these designs. And the result was that we created 3 architectural plans Again, all volunteer hours by everybody that's involved from Ventura College and Central Coast ADU. And, this is for the betterment of the community, and we're, all pretty excited to be involved with it. And this is just our company information. I just kind of want to leave you with our mission statement, which is Central Coast ADU exists to simplify the residential development process for property owners and to contribute meaningful solutions to the resolution of the California housing crisis at a local level. And my last slide is just Q&A. So I'm going to leave this up here just briefly. If you didn't get the slideshow, you can get it here. If you want to get to our website, that's the other QR code. And we'll be doing Q&A at the end of all the speakers. Thank you all.
Thank you, Arturo. That I walked through that presentation with him for the first time the other day, and I thought I knew like a good decent amount of information on ADUs, and then I realized that I knew nothing about ADUs except that it meant accessory dwelling unit. So that was so much good information. I know that you all hopefully learned something tonight from Arturo. He could have spent, like he said, he normally speaks on this for an hour plus. So there's so many things to dig into. I encourage you to connect with him. We will be emailing out for everyone that was in attendance tonight, the slideshow from all the speakers tonight. So don't feel like you have to write copious notes or take pictures of every slide. So we'll be sending that out to you guys. This is a resource to you. So we're not trying to hold it and keep it hostage. We want to make sure you all have the information you need from tonight. So again, thank you, Arturo. And I do want to mention, he was talking about the program and the students and the 100 plus hours. On the TV next to the screen, if you've noticed, there's a slideshow that's been going through. That is some photos that have been captured with the work that's been done on this new program that's being rolled out. So that's a fun thing just to pay attention to throughout the night as well. All right, moving forward, we are going to be talking and hearing from the WCDC, the Westside Community Development Corporation, and they are a federally recognized community-based development organization that was formed in 2003 to activate partnerships and secure resources to strengthen Ventura's West Side. Welcome to the West Side. Their programs focus on 4 impact areas: spurring economic opportunity, sparking community revitalization, empowering local leaders, and building a connected community. Through events, workshops, and special projects, the WCDC connects those who seek to improve their lives, their livelihoods, or their community through resources and opportunities to help create positive change. With the WCDC, we are going to be hearing tonight from Kendra Gonzalez and Helen Eloyan. Kendra was born and raised here on the Avenue. She attended local schools and graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Business from CSUCI. She has always considered the West Side town a home base since her family-owned restaurant, which is right up the road. Taqueria Tepidon. Anyone been there? All right. If you haven't, maybe mosey on over after tonight, huh? That been operating for almost 30 years here in the heart of the Avenue. Her recent role into motherhood has rekindled her desire in local activism and beautification of the Avenue. She aspires to help to improve the area, which is often overlooked, and to encourage involvement in residents and businesses. She hopes to see more murals, parks, and local businesses develop here in the near future. And Helen is a dedicated advocate for community collaboration and public planning. She works as a project manager, specializing in environmental planning and land use, and as the director of the WINS program at the WCDC. Her nonprofit work focuses on affordable housing, economic development, and supporting vulnerable residents in their pursuit of housing and employment opportunities. So this is right up her alley. Helen navigates complex regulations to provide meaningful feedback and resolutions for nonprofit and the private sector projects. Her commitment to public service and community development drives her efforts to make a positive impact of Ventura County. They're here tonight to share a little bit more about the special program, a little bit what WCDC is doing with this ADU program. So without any further ado, please welcome Kendra and Helen.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. The ADU Toolkit Workshop. We're so happy to be here. Thank you, Sarah and Greg, for opening your wonderful office to everybody. This is amazing. Just special shout out to Helena Loyan for creating this program with the students from Ventura College. Also Arturo Hernandez from Central Coast ADU for spending countless hours mentoring these students. It's all volunteer work. And also Leona Rollins for being here from the City of Ventura. She's going to educate you on the city's process. So we're just really happy to have everybody here. Go ahead, Marco. Slide. So the Westside Innovative Neighborhood Solution, or WINS, is one of our 6 programs that we have at the WCDC. So thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. She kind of basically did a great job of covering the background work for WCDC. We've been here since 2003. Our office is located behind Vaughn's. We have many resources. We help small businesses. We do neighborhood cleanups. We have student entrepreneurship programs. We create a lot of the murals you see on the west side. So you've probably seen our Ventura postcard mural. But I'm going to hand it over to Helen. She's the Westside Innovative Housing Solutions Program Director.
Thank you, Kendra. It was great seeing everyone here today. So we'll try to keep it fun and snappy with our presentation. So WINS, Westside Innovative Neighborhood Solutions is the program I direct. Our goal with housing is to focus on gentle density and naturally occurring affordable housing. So I know there was a lot of folks who aren't really stoked about multifamily housing and even feel limited by it in some ways because accessible floor plans aren't really available. Young families want to have a yard for their kids to play in. And there's a number of other reasons why ADUs are so attractive for our community members. And I personally felt like that was an overlooked area. So we wanted to focus on how to grow those opportunities for our residents. So just a little bit of a timeline. I was recruited to the WCDC in 2022. And we started kind of incubating this idea. And it was actually one of our residents that kind of put us on to this about how they were frustrated about navigating the process as a homeowner. I pull permits for a living. I'm a land use consultant. So typically I work for commercial and industrial facilities, and it's very hard to get permits when you have a lot of resources. So I cannot imagine a regular homeowner or just resident wanting to undergo an administrative process and pull a permit because there's a lot of questions that get asked, and if you use the wrong word, it can trigger a bunch of other things. So we're kind of here to, yes, cut red tape, but also help guide our residents as they try to offer affordable housing for our neighbors. So in 2023, that's when the inaugural lecture happened. As you'll see here, there's classroom settings. It was me, former council member Mike Johnson, and also representatives from CAUSE got together, kicked off a lecture, and it was a semester-long kind of program where the students would design an ADU, and then at the end, we would pick the ADU winners. They would kind of enter into an internship with local firms. So we did our second design contest in 2024, and then May 1st of this year, we transmitted 3 construction level plan sets to the City of Ventura for structural engineering. And we hope those will be available soon for the public to use. This is kind of just a screenshot of the lecture, and then this is sorry, Kendra, we didn't pick the best picture of us. Our kickoff meeting with the students. Go ahead. Thank you. So I'm not going to read this whole quote to you, but I think most folks are probably familiar. CLU, Cal Lutheran University, they do an economic forecast for our region. And one of the most troubling things that I read for the housing analysis was that, there's really significant impacts with the stagnant wages and the rising cost of housing. So it's basically limiting the ability for people to move up. So socioeconomic mobility is not really happening here in our county. So I'll read this last part to you. Thus, Ventura is not only one of the most unaffordable, it is one of the most unequal counties in the nation. That's not a great thing to be number one in. So I know, so it's something that it's not an easy fix. I personally think we need to throw the whole kitchen sink at the housing issue. It is a critical path for economic development. At the end of the day, people need to work and live here. And it's better for the environment if they're living in our neighborhoods. It's better for our neighborhoods to have diverse neighbors. So we're trying to do everything we can by encouraging our residents to, if you develop an ADU, consider offering it, if you're able, affordably to one of our neighbors so we can continue to live, work, and have this beautiful community that we all love. So a little bit, this is about the West Side in general. We are a disadvantaged community. So if you go on the Cal Enviro screen, you can see that there's pretty large housing burden. So that's the kind of difference between what folks are earning, what they're paying. I think it's about 33% of your wage should realistically go towards your rent. But I can tell you, I have a master's degree. I work in, in a STEM field. I myself cannot afford to live here. And it's sad. And I did everything that everyone told me to do. I went to university twice. I have certifications, and it's not working out that well for me. If I didn't have something happen to my family that caused me to live in this neighborhood in my brother's home, I don't think I would be living here, and I don't think I'd be in front of everybody right now. So we're trying to do everything we can to encourage folks to be offering affordable housing. So social implications of unaffordable housing. People choose to forego health care. So if your tooth hurts, but your rent's due, you're gonna probably just pay your rent and then go another month with an achy tooth or another serious problem. There's also reducing the amount of times that you eat in a day. I've personally done that. I'm not ashamed to say it. Like I've lived with mold. I've lived with pests. It's not until recently where I've had the opportunity to kind of fix these issues, but I was okay living in substandard conditions because I was the breadwinner for my family of 5. And I'm kind of like, 9 years of my career now. I wasn't always making enough to stay afloat. So you can imagine like the conditions that a lot of people live in that maybe aren't as lucky to have like a professional job that can give them a step up in wage. So not just the physical environment, but also the stress, mental health impacts. There's short-term and long-term implications of living in these kind of situations. So I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on the kind of underbelly of the housing unaffordability issue. So benefits of developing affordable housing, I think we all kind of talked about it. We don't have to go too much into it, but helping folks climb the ladder to home ownership. That's something we really care about. Having these stepping stone opportunities so people do become homeowners, because that is something people still want. I know apartments are going up like crazy, but at the end of the day, a lot of people want to settle down, have kids, and own a home. That really hasn't changed. Economic development, we talked about that. Workforce housing. It's one of the best ways that we can increase our economic resources here locally. Increase property taxes, passive income from the renters, low density housing solution. These are all benefits. Go ahead. Okay, so the toolkit. Everything Venturans need to know to naturally grow affordable housing. So our objective is basically cut red tape as much as we can. Take out the most stressful parts of developing an ADU. So me personally, I am available for free as part of the Westside Community Development Corporation to help you project manage your ADU project. So if you run into a situation where you're like, oh, I want to submit this, but I'm not sure if the city, received my request, I will go to the city and check on that for you. If you're having trouble finding a consultant, a contractor, we will develop a resource and provide that to you. If you're confused about the lending situation and you need another contact, we will connect you with those contacts as well. We're developing a living resource directory with everyone you would need to complete your project to ensure that the ADU gets built and it has the best chance of being offered affordably for our neighbors. So we've looked at other programs that are pretty similar to ours that have said, they've saved their residents up to $160,000 with programs like this. And a lot of the times, and Arturo can probably attest this, but when I was talking to him first, I was like, okay, how many rounds are we going to go with building and safety? Because usually you submit, you get a 30-day review, you come back with a bunch of comments. And I was like 6 times, and he's like, no, we would never go that far. But sometimes you work with architects that don't really know the jurisdiction, and they do go that long. So could you imagine 6 months of just plan checking back and forth with the city, assuming your architect can turn it around within a month or pretty in short order. But that in itself is stressful. What if they need a budget increase that you weren't accounting for. What if the city is invoking a new kind of regulation that you were unfamiliar with because you were not informed about it? So these are all kind of issues that we're all working to avoid. So the pre-reviewed ADU designs. So the first round were submitted. We have, and these are all named after the students. So the Monaco, 589 square feet, 1 bed, 1 bath. The Goza, the 745, 2 bed, 1 bath. Monroy, 1,000, 3 bed, 2 bath. And we also have those drawings available in the back if you'd like to turn the pages. You'll notice on the front sheet that it is blank because that is your time to shine as an artist. You'll have to draw out your lot and where the ADU is going, but that's as much as you'll need to do. Maybe check a few more boxes. But other than that, the rest of the plan sheets are in there and they're ready to go. We had, I see Ben Turner in the back, Turner ADA Consulting, did a very thorough accessibility review to make sure that folks can actually live in these drawings no matter where they are in their lives. If they're a wheelchair user, and this is also, you know, thinking about yourselves, if like God forbid something happens, you're unable to go, you know, like let's say you're in a cast or something like that. These are really living in place drawings. So everyone should be able to live in these floor plans and be able to have a really nice quality of life as well. So these are all electric. They were all designed by college students. They were fostered by the local experts. And you'll get to see a couple of them here soon as well. Go ahead. So this was the first year that we had the program. I think there was about like 30 students in each cohort. Go ahead. This is going to be just kind of the before pictures. So there's the Monaco. This is kind of what it looked like when they did the drawing. And all the students are kind of they were at different places with their level of experience. So you'll see like the different floor plans and elevation. This is the next one, the Goza. Monroy. So these were the design winners. We actually, at the end of the year, all the students had kind of like a showcase. So we had invited members from the Women in Construction and Design group. There were members from the city's design review committee. I personally felt bad, but they would walk around and roast all the drawings and say, "Why did you put a door there? Huh, maybe you should move it." So they got to get some real life experience with their drawings. They're a little different now than what they started. Go ahead, hit the next one. But this is kind of the post internship. So we got the Monaco now, looking great. The Goza, Monroy. So all of these, you know, they got to a point where they were able to use software to create the drawings, and some of the students had not really, you know, okay, I'll just say they don't learn about the regulations in school. So I think it was a big awakening for everybody when they figured out what all the regulations were. A lot of them said that, you know, it was a very valuable experience because when you draw, you're just drawing and you don't really have to check the rule book so you can be creative. But when it came to our designs and us reviewing them, we're like, this is not going to work for a wheelchair user. You have to make this consideration. Or, you know, consider that this is in a backyard. So do you want to put the window facing into someone else's like home like this? And the element of privacy and how to encourage yard space in a yard to even happen. And also thinking about the people who are going to live there. Are the designs going to be for a single parent? Are they going to be for like 2 college students who are in this unit together? Like really think about the end user when you're making the designs. I personally found myself making comments about this seems like a good party area for college students. And then this one was, you know, this is good for a single mother because the bedroom is further away from the front door. And so it's considerations like that really matter. And I think the students all brought with them a little something when they were bringing the designs forward as well. So this is kind of the roadmap. We really cast a wide net for partners. You know, we had college students, so we had the Ventura College, that's kind of public, city, private. We are a nonprofit. We kind of put together a coalition. I will say all of our contributors donated their time, their services. This was really like ran on $0 basically, other than our time managing it. That's not very common that architects will just spend 100 hours mentoring students, donating their designs. And I just want to say that like a huge thank you to Arturo's Group, Central Coast ADU and all the designers there, because without them, our program could not occur. For the record, like we probably get like around $130,000 from the city to manage 6 programs. My program and the special needs trade school we're also working to develop, typically they share a bucket and it's only about $20,000. So the fact that we're able to put together this many drawings and support the development of a trade school, we would never be able to do that without our partners. So ADA consulting as well, like that's a beautiful thing that we could have someone really thoroughly review and kind of invent standards for the ADUs and make sure they're accessible. So then we've been coordinating with the city. We found some money to pay the engineers, and now we're at the point where we're ready to start pre-approving the ADUs and offering them to all the residents. So another thing that we're adding with this ADU program, at least on the Westside Community Development side, is a resource directory, because too many ADUs are not getting built and the projects are failing. One of the big issues that we run into is that the contractors just kind of, I don't know, take the money and run, so to speak. Don't finish the job, which is obviously a horrible thing we don't want to happen. So to the extent we can pre-qualify folks for you guys, we will do that. The other thing is the permit process is really stressful. I know a lot of people maybe had a bad interaction with the city previously if they had done some work that wasn't permitted. So now they're hesitant on inviting like an inspector back in. So those are situations where we can buffer. More plan checks than budgeted. And then any other reasons that you guys haven't pursued an ADU, we would love to hear about it so we can resolve those issues as well. So then the supportive services. One thing that we're going to start really working on is ADU amnesty support. So legalizing unpermitted ADUs. Tenant landlord services. A lot of the times people are like, I want to have an ADU and rent it, but I don't want to be a landlord and deal with all those kind of problems. Well, like we've invited the Housing Resource Center here. We're going to have other partners that we can direct you to, because I acknowledge that it can be intimidating being a landlord in California. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be difficult and it doesn't have to be painful. And we can connect you with the resources to make it as easy as possible to offer the ADUs affordably to our residents. Vetted contractors, consultants, lending resources, project management support. That's someone like me helping you guys through the whole process. Other resources for moving, finding furniture, sustainability, whatever else you guys need. We're here to serve you guys. So just let us know. And I think, go ahead, next slide. So I just want to say this program also was basically incubated by Curtis Cormain. Some of you may know him. He was the professor at Ventura College. He passed away last year. He basically started the design contest with the students, let me into his classroom. And, you know, we're really sad that he wasn't here to see the transmittal of the design, but we're really honored to carry out this project as his last contribution, architectural contribution to the world. And we've credited him on the plans, but he was an exceptional man. I miss him greatly. I'm gonna cry in front of everyone. Oh my gosh. And I just wanna, I wanna thank him basically. And I think that's probably it for me. So it's my contact information. If you guys have any questions, I will be here haunting the back of the room. But yeah, text me, call me, email me, whichever is easiest for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. If you guys haven't had a chance at the end of the night, Helen did say out front, there's a couple representatives here that can give you some additional resources, and then look through the plans. It's really fun to turn the big pages and look at all these things kind of come to life. Thank you so much for presenting tonight, Helen and Kendra. Up next, we are delighted to have the city with us, and we have guest speaker tonight, Leona Rollins, who is the Housing Services Manager, and she is here to chat with us a little bit about this daunting process of permitting, right? And talking to us about how to get through it and what the process is. So please welcome Leona.
As Sarah mentioned, my name is Leona Rollins. I'm the Housing Services Manager for the City of Ventura. And I want to do a huge shout out to Kendra and Helen and WCDC for inviting us to this workshop tonight. So we're going to do a little bit background information, and then we're going to talk about why ADUs are so important to our community. So this is a little background regarding my team. So basically, one of our core goals is addressing and combating homelessness, making sure that we are providing affordable housing options. We manage grants and other funding opportunities, and we partner with other service providers throughout the community. And one of those partners includes WCDC. So that's a reflection of our team. Next slide. So you guys kind of already know, everyone told you exactly what an ADU is. ADUs are phenomenal resources for your community. It can help you trigger additional income. It can help you, have your family members age in place as necessary. But they're a great asset to the community for a number of various reasons. Next slide. So the reason why the city loves ADUs is not only for the benefit of the community, but also it really truly helps us with our housing element. So we're currently in our 6th cycle. So every couple years, we develop a housing element, which essentially is a part of our general plan. A huge shout out to our general plan team at the city. And basically, it's for us to adopt housing plans in order for us to meet the requirements that the state puts out for us. So every year, the state will do a calculation and say, you have to meet these certain number of numbers to be able to house everybody in your community, regardless of their situation, and ensuring that they can meet the needs of every socioeconomic status. Next slide. So when we had our housing element certified, the state told us we need 5,312 brand new housing units. And this includes 593 extremely low income units, 594 very low income units, 865 low income units, 950 moderate income units, and 2,310 above moderate units. And essentially, the development of ADUs can assist us in achieving these goals of meeting our RENA numbers. Next slide. So what we wanted to do is that we held back a little bit, as other jurisdictions were saying they were going to build 200 ADUs in 8 years, 500 ADUs in 8 years. We wanted to be a little bit reserved because we want to have realistic expectations, because we knew what the costs were to build ADUs. We knew some people that have already built them in the past under our previous cycle were spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to build these ADUs. So we were like, let's be cautious and reserved. We only ask for, we'll see if we can build at least 100. Literally, as of the end of last year, we were already at 150. And when I spoke to our chief building official, Tim Fisk, this morning, he said we're probably going to even exceed our prior year goals and exceed the number of ADUs that are currently in the process. And we're hopeful by us having these pre-designs that are going to be available for free, saving you a substantial amount of money, that would lead to even more ADUs being built in our community. Next slide. So although we have constructed over 150 units based to our valuable community members, we want to ensure that every property owner, regardless if you own a single family home or a multi-family dwelling unit, that you have the resources in order to accomplish the goal of building an ADU. So we have partnered with RM Design Group and WCDC, and we'll be adding several additional standardized ADU designs and floor plan options to our website very soon. These standardized ADU designs and floor plan options are currently scheduled to be presented at our design review committee on June 4th. And we're going to be taking them through the entire process to streamline it on behalf of each of the community members. Next slide. So there are going to still be some requirements on your end. So, you'll get to go to our city website. There'll be 7 designs, 4 from RM, 3 from our amazing students from Ventura College. And you can just easily select whatever design that you want, free of charge. However, you will still have to submit an application and some additional materials. So for example, if your property is located in the coastal zone, you will have to ask for a coastal development permit. One of these site plans will be provided, elevation, floor plans, all that's going to be included for you. And then typically you will submit your plan application and materials, you'll pay the application fee, which we're working on getting reduced for our pre-approved designs. And then once you're deemed complete, then you'll be assessed a deposit and some permit fees. So one thing to note is that this process, from application to permit issuance, for some people, and I was talking to our permits team this morning, was taking 8 months plus. Some of them, if you didn't have a really good architect and they were non-responsive, it could take 12 to almost 18 months. Just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, as Helen mentioned. So we want to be able to streamline this process. So yeah, you may get a couple of comments back based on, the configuration that you want to do to personalize your ADU, but we want to streamline this process to shorten the time frame from application to permit issuance. Next slide. So basically what our goal is that we want from the application submission to completeness to range from a minimum of 2 months, no more than 6 months in comparison to the 12 to 18-month time frame that we were experiencing before. And then, you will be a source, a set of fees, whether it be building fees and development impact fees. However, as Arturo mentioned earlier, if you're 749 square feet and lower, you don't have to pay the development impact fees, but you will still be subject to the school board fees and other fees that are assessed at the county level. But our goal ultimately is to work with every property owner to ensure not only are they reaching their goal of building an ADU, but also ensuring that we're able to make this process streamlined and even more affordable. Because typically the state, for example, the California Department of Finance Housing Authority, they will release like a grant every single year. They will put aside a pot of money. And then basically they will only offer you $25,000 for pre-development costs. Literally, there's 1,000 applications come in, and we haven't seen that grant be available since 2023. So at the city level, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Elsa, who oversees our ADU program. Basically, we're gonna be looking for various funding sources at the state level to see how we can get together like a grant program so that we can help community members who need those financial resources build these ADUs. Because and then, for example, one of the things that we're considering at this point is that if you agree to do an affordability covenant on your ADU, we will forgive the loan. Because basically with affordability covenant means that, for example, if it's a rental, you will have it restricted for up to 55 years. We can do some negotiations on that. But if you have that affordability covenant and you agree to rent to someone who is a lower income status, which increases our affordable housing stock portfolio, we could be able to basically forgive the entire loan, which is more than what the state does. And I think the next slide is this question. Yeah, so this is all my contact information. If you have the opportunity and you're interested in learning more about the designs and seeing our amazing students go to design review committee, please do not hesitate to join us at the design review committee on June 4th, 2025. This is all my contact information. If you have questions about ADUs, if you have questions about affordable housing, anything that relates to housing and homelessness, do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leona. Some exciting news about that streamlined process. So if that's in your wheelhouse or something that you or someone you know is interested in, it's really exciting that it's coming to fruition. It's been a long process. There's been a lot of behind the scenes work, a lot of gears and parts moving, but it is on the home stretch, and that's going to be coming out soon, which is really exciting. Well, for some of you, you may have the ability to write a check to build these wonderful ADUs on your property, and some of you might need financing. So our last speaker tonight is here to talk briefly and very high level about lending and how to utilize a loan to build one of these wonderful ADUs. Greg Abrams, my wonderful husband, hi babe. He's a branch manager here. That was wonderful applause. That was beautiful. Branch manager here at American Pacific Mortgage, bringing over 24 years of dedicated experience in the mortgage industry. Since joining APM 21 years ago, he has consistently demonstrated a passion for guiding clients through every step of the home buying process, leveraging both his deep industry knowledge and his commitment to financial education. He translates the complex mortgage concepts into clear, actionable advice, empowering first-time buyers, move-up home buyers, and investors alike. Greg has received the recognition of the 2024 Poinsettia Awards for Small Business of the Year and was among the top 1% mortgage originators nationwide in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Outside his role here at APM, he is the co-founder of our nonprofit Love VC, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bettering and beautifying the community through collaboration. And he also serves on the board for one of our wonderful business neighbors across the street, Bike Ventura. So without any further ado, our last speaker of the night, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys are ready to get deep into numbers, right? Everybody brought their calculators and talking about all that. You know, I just want to say it's nice that they've joined forces early on. I think it's been a couple years in collaboration that they brought me into this. And as you can hear from the city and from the state, everybody has their own guidelines. And one of the big things, again, whether you're paying cash to improve your home or you need a loan, to understand what it takes to obtain financing, I think is highly relevant. If you're mid-project and you run out of funds, you're going to come find me. And even if you're going to sell your home, the buyer probably wants to obtain a loan. And so understanding how lenders look at ADUs is quite different than all of their guidelines. So again, just I'm going to go over high level concepts, and I think it's just to understand that. As American Pacific Mortgage, we are a direct lender, so everything is in-house. And if there's a mortgage program available, we have it. We have a commercial division. We have a rehab remodel division. We have a construction division. Those are separate because they're two different things. We have a reverse mortgage division. We can even broker. So we have our hands on a little bit of everything that involves housing. Now, I do want to make sure most of what we do and what you understand is residential lending. That's 1 to 4 units. Arturo got carried away with 8 units. Plus 2 ADUs. I was listening. We can finance that, but that's definitely going to be different programs altogether. Okay. So as we get started here, let's kind of dive into just the high level concepts. And again, we have many different programs. So what I wanted to kind of show you is what is very easy. What are a lot of people coming after us for, whether it's building an ADU, consolidating debts, going on a trip to Hawaii. Who cares what that money is for? Those are going to be the first 2 programs. Basically, we're tapping into the equity that you have existing on your home, okay? So the first blue house here, that's going to be some type of HELOC or HE loan. So many of you that have been around for a while, maybe you have your home paid for, or maybe you were lucky enough to refinance a few years back and have a 2.5% interest rate. You don't want to touch it. But you have so much equity in your home, how do you pay for this ADU? So we have these HELOCs and HE loans, which will even go into second lien positions. So you don't have to get rid of your first mortgage to be able to do something. Cost effective, they're for really well qualified buyers. And we're going to get into some of the particulars. The refinance, this is, okay, maybe you need a large sum. Maybe your home is completely paid for, or you only owe $50,000. Whatever that case may be, we want to analyze your complete goals and your financial status. And if it makes sense, then we can do a full-on refinance. If you owe nothing, or even if you do, we can pay that off and tap into the equity, get you into a 30-year fixed first mortgage. Those are based upon current home value. And I say it's very simplistic because as we're doing a cash out, I don't care what you use the money for. I want to reiterate that. So those are the easiest to be able to finance, right? We can drive down any street in Ventura or any city, and we can find many homes that are not finished. My old neighbor had some siding that was off for several years, and that was in a nice neighborhood, right? So many people do not finish projects. So we have construction loans, we have remodel rehabilitation loans, and we can get you the maximum amount based upon the future value of the improvements. So just easy math, if your current home is valued at $500,000, with an ADU, it's going to be worth $700,000. I can lend you 110% of $700,000, okay? Now, that requires us mitigating the risk. And in mortgages, I can't reinforce that word enough. Everything that we do pertains to risk. So how do we mitigate, eliminate, reduce the amount of risk? We need to oversee it, right? So we need to see plans. We need to see permits. We have some type of vetting for your contractor to make sure that they don't take the money and run, as was suggested earlier. So it is the most invasive. So we're going to say the easiest to the most difficult in terms of financing, but it's also the maximum amount that you can obtain. This isn't all of our solutions. And again, I don't want to say this is just very high level. Another program that I think is great is for seniors. We do reverse mortgages. Many people think it's just receiving money each month. You can also take a line of credit, or you can take lump sums. So there's many different options available. This is just kind of a sampling, okay? So with the HELOC, HE loan option, HELOC is a line of credit. It's a very large credit card tied to your house. The thing to understand here is mortgage lingo. Everything is an acronym. So the CLTV is combined loan to value. So we can go all the way up to 90% combined loan to value. This example, if you have a first mortgage of 500,000, that means we can do a second mortgage, second lien for additional 400,000, and we can get you all the way up to 90%. So we can access quite a bit of equity by doing that. Next slide. This is some cases somebody doesn't have a mortgage at all. We can do these HELOCs and HELoans in first or second lien position. So if you had your home paid off, potentially we could go that. There are limits on loan amounts, 750,000. We have one that goes up to $1 million. So again, there's a lot of resources available. Okay, so these are the easiest, the most cost-effective, but they're for well-qualified. Now, again, this isn't just, can we with a 680 credit score? Yes, we have some exceptions in different programs. Just in general qualifying terms, just to dangle a little carrot over everybody, they're looking for 680 or 700 credit score for a standalone financing. How do we qualify is based upon a debt to income ratio. So if you make $10,000 a month, just the easy math here, 45% or $4,500 can be the proposed housing payment plus any liability that's on your credit report. The HELOCs, most of those are adjustable. And I know that we're in a trained format of 30-year fixed. For many, many years, 30-year fixed is great, but for many years, adjustables have been good. Right now, in the next foreseeable few years, the HELOCs are going to be going down in rate. So having something that is adjustable in this format is not horrible. Now, these aren't the best long-term solutions, so it's always something to have. It gets a little complicated with the draw period, the repayment period, etc. I'm not going to get into those details, but again, one-on-one, we'll have these discussions of more detailed how they work and whatnot. I'm just giving you, again, high-level qualifications. Because they're adjustable, it says that the qualifying rate is 2% above the start rate. So, yeah. This goes into a traditional refinance, cash-out refinance. There's two different types of refinances. Lenders call it a rate and term. So if you have a 6% interest rate and you want to just not take any equity out, but just improve your interest rate or term, shorter amortization schedule, that would be a rate and term refinance. Cash out, we're actually putting money into your pocket after we close the transaction. And then this we can go up to an 80% combined loan to value. You can also layer these with the HELOCs. So there's a lot of different, different options. Credit qualifying, this is probably going to be the easiest, right? So you have some very forgiving credit scores down to a 580. Debt to income ratio, you can get the 30-year fixed product if you choose. This is where it turns into the beast, the animal, right? So again, as we're basing this upon future value, the work in progress here is we need to know how to evaluate it. In lending, we look at comparable sales. That's the approach that we look. So as we're going to, in this case, build an ADU, we need to have some sales comparisons that have also ADUs to determine the value. Then we can lend based upon the future value. So, and again, up to 110%. The next slide, we're going to get into just, again, some high-level details. So FHA, they offer probably one of the more common, it's called a 203K. FHA is specifically for primary residence. Now, you need to reside in one of the units, but it's for and catered towards primary residence. If we go into the conventional financing, this is where they allow it for second homes as well as investment properties. Okay, next slide. The FHA, there's mins and maxes. Basically, they have a streamlined version, kind of what we're doing with the ADU, a streamlined version, easier if you're just doing some quick updates. That's what the streamline is, the 203K streamline. It's up to 35,000 in low income census tracts. That's what that qualified opportunity zone is. then you can go a little bit higher up to 50. And then the full 203K, there is no maximum. We have maximum mortgage worksheets for all of these programs. So again, as we sit down with a mortgage consultation one-on-one, we can go through what are the costs. We could have some of that from some of our other partners that were here. And we can decide ultimately roughly how much we can get you to build the ADU. Next slide. Loan to value, again, the FHA is going to provide the maximum. So that is 110% of the future value. When we get into the conventional, it is based upon occupancy. So as a primary residence, that's where you can get up to 97% rather. There are some contingency reserves, but really they want to have it really buttoned down as far as if you're financing this, how do we get this project from start to finish? With the contractor, they meet with them, they set up draws, there's time windows. Once they complete a section, they have to come out and make sure that it's been completed to specs. Then they get their funds released or that draw released. There is some overruns, but again, they try to, at all costs, avoid using those, and they try to keep the contractors moving along with the time periods. Most of them are 6. They will allow up to 12 months. And then here's the one unique thing that I did want to we're talking ADUs, so we got to be very specific. FHA is the most lenient, but their little caveat, if you look at it, it must be an attached ADU. That does not mean it needs to be a junior ADU where it's a garage conversion per se, but if it is an independent structure, the workaround is some type of breezeway or something like that. So it is very important if you're considering resale, that always might be a good option to have, right? So if you have a buyer that comes along, they can get not only conventional, but also FHA financing. And then again, everything kind of coincides with the mortgage consultation. Everybody's goals are different. Everybody's scenario is different. This was just a little teaser of some of the mortgage options that are available. And I think we're going to set up for Q&A. Like we have a podcast. Actually, recently we had Arturo and Helen on my podcast, G Money. So if you get an opportunity, you want to re-listen to some of the information, definitely check that out. And here we are. So maybe the panelists that were here, we can all come up here and.
Thank you so much, Greg. And Greg has a sign up for those consultations. So if you're wanting, and with any one of these speakers tonight, if you're wanting to sit down and do a one-on-one with them about questions with the city, questions with the program, questions getting started on your own plans, or if you want to start with your financing. Is this even feasible for you? Connect with any of them. Greg does have a sign-up sheet out though for his consultations, so you can sign up there and we'll be in touch with you, or you can do it a QR code and it'll go right to his calendar and you can pick something there. So what kinds of questions you guys have? We got done a little bit early, which is awesome. Early is better than late, right? But what kinds of questions you guys have for the panel?
I probably just missed it. What is the separation between the main residence and the ADU if it's a separate ADU?
You can actually get kind of close, but it depends on if you're going to fire rate it or not. So there's some approved assemblies that designers will look through to figure out what's the best fit. In the past, the city of Ventura has allowed 6 feet without fire separation, but they're getting a little bit more strict now because there's going to be a new code change, and they're kind of looking to the newer code change. So what they're saying now, what we're seeing on our plans is that they're saying you have to draw a line in the middle somewhere between them and then measure the distance between the two structures. And that determines whether it has to be fire rated or not. So you could get it pretty close and still call it detached, but you just have to plan, not only will you have to fire rate your ADU, but you may have to fire rate parts of your home too.
And can there be a breezeway between the main residence and the
Yeah,
ADU?
generally speaking, that shouldn't be an issue.
My question was, since these are going to be pre-approved, although the city is going to have to review the site and, setbacks and so on and so forth, is there any consideration for reductions on the permit fees from the city?
So that is one thing that we are, sorry. That is one thing that we are considering, because not only do we want to have the pre-approves of ADU designs and plans, but we also want to offer additional incentives. So we are going through the process of trying to figure out how much can we do of a reduction in terms of the actual permit fees without having a negative impact on the city, but also making it financially feasible for community members.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
CalHFA. So we do lending programs. CalHFA is California Housing Finance. And many of the down payment assistance first time buyer programs. And they did have up to 40,000. We only hit on that a little bit because it was towards permitting, planning, it was towards those costs. Whether that's coming back, they have a lot of programs that come and go. I know their intent is to bring it back. They've had some really good Green for All program was a really awesome program. They've had some really good programs. I personally sign up. I mean, I originate a lot of those loans, but also I'm on their mailing list. So I would suggest signing up on their mailing list because they have frequent updates. And if you want me to just relay the information, provide me your email and I can also keep you up to date as well.
I would add to that too, definitely advocate for yourselves because the money for that comes from the state and it comes through legislation. So, talk to your representatives, tell them that, you're sad that you missed it, but you're looking to develop in the future and you'd like to see this program come back. In the position that you are as property owners, it's probably the best you can do right now. And, hopefully they do bring it back because it did help a lot of our clients, I can tell you.
This is a rumor mill question. Live in a high fire zone up in the hill. Heard rumors that you couldn't build an ADU in your yard because of high fire. Is that true or false? Which? True?
Actually, that's not what I heard even through the city of Ventura. Yeah.
Up at Clearpoint, I think it's high fire. I mean,
So I've been through this before with some of our prospective clients, where I've had to ask all the way up to the senior building official, Tim Fisk, what the situation was, because there was a time when I was told absolutely not even in high fire, much less very high fire. And my understanding was that there was a ruling from the state that there was another area, not Ventura, that it ended up going through where they basically did like a law check. There was an official at the state that said, no, fire doesn't matter. You can ask them to fire rate it. That's fine. The whole thing has to be fire rated, but that you have to allow an ADU. And it goes back to the statewide exemption thing that I had up here. So it sounds like there might be a little bit of question about that. Somebody's gonna have to follow up about that, but
still a rumor, huh?
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk to you, find out who that source is. Second question, financial. If you're making it a rental, can you do a 1031 exchange out of another rental? Like a build.
Yeah, I mean, 1031, you're selling and you want to use the proceeds. That's more for the 1031, whether they would allow that. Has to be a like kind property is typically what they're looking for, which it would be an investment. So that's going to be up to your 1031 exchange company, whether they grant that. On the lending side, there's a mediator or mid party that handles that. So to us, it's just like coming out of your bank account. We just look at how much funds are available. So we don't get too in depth on the 1031 as lenders.
Read this.
We're recording. Prestige.
Huh? I need to use this. Okay. Yeah. course. I have a lot of questions, but I'll limit it to two. So with regard to the ADUs being under the umbrella of the low income, if someone builds an ADU for the purpose of renting it out, whether it's going to be to help a family or that's low income, are there rent caps, or is there, I don't know anything about the rent control around here.
So as of right now, the city of Ventura does not have any form of rent stabilization or rent control. If you do have a multi-family dwelling, 2 or more units, or if you have a single family home that's owned by a corporation and not an actual living person, you are subject to Assembly Bill 1482, which does basically mean that for rent increases, you are able to do a 5% increase plus local CPI. Those numbers typically come out in July. So from now to July 31st, 2025, the rent cap based on if you're subject to AB 1482 is 8.8%.
Based on what?
So it's based on the fact that you're allowed to get a 5% base
Okay.
plus local consumer price index.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're
But-
allowed to set the rent ourselves.
Yes, because there's no such thing. It's illegal now to do what they consider vacancy decontrol. So many, many years ago, before Costa-Hawkins went into effect, it basically indicated that if you had a person living in your unit, for example, at $500 a month, when that person vacated or got evicted, you would have to keep the rent at $500 per month. But now that's no longer legal at the state level. It's been trying to be repealed numerous times and has never been successful. So every time a person moves out, you can reset the rent amount however you see fit.
Okay, next question, and I'll be done. Regarding the loan forgiveness, if you're gonna, I forget the term you used, if it's gonna be low income, what was that called again?
It's an affordability covenant.
Affordability covenant. And then is the loan forgiveness, that's still pending, right?
That's correct.
Is that
yes.
funded through grants or?
So what we are hoping to do, so as Greg talked about with the Housing Finance Authority, we are also looking to apply for some additional funding through the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is our state agency. They have a program called Cal Home, and now based on the fact that the governor is really pushing for ADU developments, there is an application that you can submit in order to provide grants grant and forgivable loans to actual community members. So that's our goal in the next funding cycle, is to apply for that funding to make it available to our community.
Thanks.
So mentioned to the Housing Rights Center, Representative Christian is here. If you have any questions. Housing Rights, tenant rep, there's information and resources here. Yeah.
Hi, thanks everybody for bringing us together tonight and sharing this information. I'm curious about SB 9 that went into effect, I think, in 2022, and allows a lot split on a residential zoned property. So where you could have essentially 2 separate main residents and then with an ADU and a JDU on each split lot. And I'm a land use consultant. I haven't had any clients pursue that yet, but I'm very eager to has the City of Ventura had any of those applications, or maybe Arturo, have you processed any of those?
And for us, that is one of the components of our housing element, is basically doing fee waivers and making it streamline that process for lot splits for the purpose that you just described. However, in the 3 years I built the city, we have not gotten a single SB 9 application.
I would be curious if the 1031 exchange would apply to that type of scenario.
It is, as far as what I've read on splitting, having an ADU, at the state level, they made it where you have to form an HOA. So it's like selling off the back ADU as a condo. And again, I don't know if you've ever dealt with HOAs, or creating one, it's quite burdensome. So I'm not to say it's not possible, my understanding, but what I've read is that you have to form an HOA.
Yeah, I think that was actually a separate bill and the county did not sign on to it. From what
state did.
Yes.
I don't know that the county.
Thank you. We got a question over here again.
I do have a question, but I was going to mention I have an SB9 in process in Ventura City. I've been working on it about a year and a half. It's an absolute nightmare. You do end up with two legal lots. You don't have to do the HOA. You don't have to do an HOA. You'll end up with two legal lots, and then you can develop each with a junior ADU and an ADU. So you can end up with a lot of housing units. And the state has mandated this to be not a discretionary process, but an entitlement. And it makes it sound like it's going to be quite streamlined. It is absolutely not. It's a horror story. So
Sorry, I didn't, if you were going to
I
continue.
got a question afterwards, but
Oh,
you
okay.
go ahead.
But regarding that, we do have clients that are specifically hunting out multifamily properties to just max them out with housing. And so it's one thing if you've already got a property that's single family zoned and you're trying to split it, then that's, one way to create more housing off of it. But yeah, we have a couple of clients that are just keeping an eye when there's a multifamily available. They text me and say, hey, how many ADUs can I build? And I'll take a look at it and say, hey, you can do, this many, and, they'll swoop in and get it.
So I had a question, probably more for Helen, but how much wiggle room do these standardized plans have? So imagine if a client, say tier 1, they wanted to change if the approved roofing was Owens Corning, they wanted to put, some other brand on there, or if they wanted to move an interior wall, or level 3, you could say, what if they wanted to move a window by a small amount? How much flexibility do they have before you lose the right to go through with the process on a standardized way?
Yeah, I would say there's very little flexibility. And I'm sure it'll come down to the city having some specifications or some language on that. Because in reality, moving a non-structural wall is not that big of a deal. But, is there plumbing in that wall? Is there electrical in that wall? And how do you deal with that? And who's capable of dealing with that? Is it the homeowner, or does it have to go back to a designer? So it can get pretty tricky to think about making changes like that. But in the future, and this is nothing that's been discussed because we're at such an early process, an early stage of this. But in the future, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we've designed these so that they have a specific type of roof and roofing materials that work for that roof. That it would be great if we could have alternative sheets that say, well, if you don't want to do this kind of pitched roof, you can do more of a flat roof, and that's going to be this kind of materials that you need. And that would probably be a whole separate review process. And so we're talking about probably down the line if the city's interested in that. But, we would be definitely open to creating some alternatives for certain things like that.
I have a quick first response on that. Firsthand, the city, the building you're in had plans that came with this building. Back behind the curtains was some additional rooms, just pony walls. So we consulted our architect, contractors, everybody, and basically the inspectors came out and said, you deviated from the plans. And I said, no, plans are there. There's an exit on top of it. And they said, no dice. Any deviation from the plans has to go back. So don't do it. I lost 3 months of time and $7,000.
But we're, if that's something that's happening pretty frequently, I mean, WCDC is willing to work with the city to see the best path forward to address those kinds of things. And then if there's, like I know a lot of garage conversion requests have been like a very hot topic. That's also like a floor plan we're kind of looking to develop with the building official, a little more complicated. But yeah, if there's a lot of those kind of requests coming through and it is a need, that is something we're interested on working on as well. So I don't want to like say flat out no. I'm a get to yes person. So I mean, we'll put our heads together and try to figure out a way for the city to be as okay with it as they can be.
Thank you over here. Yeah, go ahead. And
Hi. Many of Ventura's houses have detached garages. And will you just clarify if you can turn a detached garage into an ADU and then still add a separate detached ADU?
Not unless it's a multifamily. So if you have a detached ADU, you can turn it into only a detached garage. You can turn it only into an ADU here in Ventura. And then that would be your ADU. If you have a multifamily property, then that's a little bit different. You can convert it into, convert the detached garage into an ADU, and then you can at a minimum build 2 more detached ADUs. And depending on how many other units you have, you could potentially do more than 2.
Sorry, with an R2 designation, or actually having two or more separate?
That's a good question, and that comes up. A lot of times, if it's multifamily zoned and there's only a single family dwelling, then they'll treat it as an R1, which means they'll treat it as a single family. Sometimes what it takes is that multifamily zoning plus actually having more than one dwelling.
Yeah. Are you guys going to do any more lower cost ADU units with the college? Other options other than the 3 that eventually?
We actually started off with 4 and figured we could get 3 through pretty easily. And then, like Helen mentioned, we have been kicking around the idea of doing a garage conversion. But I don't know what WCDC's plans are. That's as much as I know.
We'll do as many as we can. Our intention is like truly to turn kind of it into an annual internship program. And then we would like to establish a scholarship in Curtis Cormain's name. And then just keep that going for as long as we can. And then if we can donate those plans to the city, that would be great. Obviously, there are some costs associated with developing the drawings, but we're happy to fundraise and work with the city to identify any funding sources we can.
Hello. During the Thomas Fire, there was traffic jam on Olive Street, a couple blocks over here. And there was concern that the wildfire would be racing through the neighborhood. Ludwig with Oasis Design up in Santa Barbara came up with a Cobb ADU, accessory dwelling unit that is constructed of clay. Clay doesn't burn. And so it would double as a fire shelter. So when the fire came through, you just go in, close the door, and you're safe until the fire goes past. So there's some folks that have been working on Cobb and rammed earth construction that would be fire safe residences. Wonder about the progress of getting those through the city planning.
So WCDC, we're happy to run plans through the city. I think ultimately that would be something that the building official would have to sign off on. I think it is actually in the building code, if I remember correctly, that kind of building material. But I mean, if we can plan check it and get it approved, the shelter in place component, like I would defer to the fire marshal if that's, guidance they're willing to endorse. But, to the extent possible, the alternative building materials, as long as it's permissible under the building code, I would see a path forward. But that's something we're willing to help run through plan check and provide free project management support for.
So the pre-approved plans, they do have check boxes where you have to say whether you're in a high fire hazard area. And if you are, then when you check that, it comes with you have to build it a certain way. And that's not to say it's anything up to the standard of what you're speaking about, because that's another level. And I think it would be great for the city to have something special for just those areas. But as far as everything else, it's for a standard neighborhood. As we've seen in some of these California fires, sometimes they can start in the hills, but they can get into some pretty deep areas of neighborhoods as they progress. And so I think the idea is at least to have those options for property owners when they're looking at these pre-approved plans. That way they can still do it, because if those options weren't there in the plans, then they would be out of luck if they're in a high fire hazard area.
Just based on some of the questions that I've heard tonight, it sounds as if there are some residents that are considering building these units to possibly rent out, which is fantastic. We all know that Ventura needs more housing supply, and that would help solve a big problem. My question is, are there any attempts or efforts or initiatives from either city staff or city council to impose further rent restrictions or rent control on mom and pop landlords, because this is exactly what we consider mom and pop. So are there any efforts being made right now to put more onerous controls on those landlords, those potential landlords, that they should be aware of today before they decide to commit to building this and outlaying that capital? Thank you.
Happy to. So program number 32 of our housing element does talk about tenant protections. Starting last fall, we did host some community workshops to kind of gauge the community that included tenants, property owners, management companies, real estate agents about their thoughts about tenant protections. This item has gone to the Planning Commission for recommendations. It's gone to our Housing and Homelessness Subcommittee for recommendations. It was initially presented as this first option, a menu of options to City Council on April 8th. It's being continued to May 27th. As of right now, I cannot tell you what's going to happen. We're just asking for direction. We're not bringing forth any type of ordinances regarding rent control, rent stabilization, or any other the menu of options. You can basically, we're just asking City Council to give us guidance on how they want to move forward, if they want to move forward. If City Council makes a decision that they don't want to move forward with any type of menu options for tenant protections, that'll be perfectly fine. We will still be subject to AB 1482 until December 31st, 2029, because January 1st, 2030, it expires. And then you'll also still be subject to SB 567. But as of right now, there's nothing on the books, and we're just waiting to see how council directs us on May 27th. Right.
Okay. If you build an ADU under the affordability covenant,
Yes.
are you subject to rent control since it's your, I mean,
Okay, so I can't speak, because we don't have nothing right now, but I can tell you what other jurisdictions have done that have implemented rent control or rent stabilization, is that typically units that are, that have housing choice vouchers, formerly known as Section 8 vouchers, or are restricted based on income, are exempt from rent stabilization. So you would not be subject to rent stabilization because those units are already been deemed affordable. No, so essentially, like, for example, if you decide that you want to rent your ADU to someone whose income is, like, we'll say $30,000 a year, they'll be considered extremely low income. So that unit, if they had rent stabilization, you would be exempt because your unit's already affordable. But if, for example, if your unit wasn't affordable, then if a city would have rent stabilization, you would be subject.
is there an income cap if you rent it out, if you have the affordability covenant? Do they have to show proof of income?
That is correct.
Just
Yes.
like the low income housing.
That is correct. Yes, you will have to show proof of income that they meet that requirement.
Is there a website or something that we can direct her to get a little
Yes.
bit more clarity? Sometimes reading things and seeing it can help get there.
Absolutely. So for our affordable housing program, the City of Ventura, we partner with the Housing Authority of the City of San Buenaventura. You literally can just Google their website, this Housing Authority of the City of San Buenaventura. You can see income limits, and it gives you income limits from every range, from a household of 1 to a household of 8. And I can give you my card too. We can talk about this.
Thank you so much.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay, one more.
We'll do
Okay.
one more.
This is our last
and
question.
The speakers are not going anywhere, but we want to everyone's time. So we're going to do one more and then we're going to go and ask individual questions. Go
So
ahead.
much pressure for the last question. Kind of, I think piggybacking on what she's asking is how you determine what an affordable unit would be for rent, like how you determine that price. Or are you just saying to be affordable, you just have to accept Section 8 vouchers and you're going based on what their rent limits are for that type of property?
And that's a fantastic question, because essentially we do not lead you into the abyss. We would work with you based on the fact, because sometimes some jurisdictions do that, but we would actually work with you to figure out what income level you would want to pursue. We would help you do the rent calculation based on square footage, bedroom count, bathroom count, the level of amenities, and we will help you set the base rent for that unit.
And is that going to be available prior to building an ADU so that when we're looking at financing, we're able to look at how long it's going to take
We will not be able to give you definitive number, but we can give you very good estimates.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great question.
All right. I know the gears are rolling and many of you have other questions, but I also know many of you want to go. So we're going to do our last thing, which is raffle prizes. We have 3 of them. This first one is Greg for here at 8 p.m. $25 to Amazon, right? Amazon went to Grant. Grant's a big winner. I just spaced your name. Kendra. Hello, there you are. I almost said Helen. I was like, no, that's not right. Kendra got us an awesome hat. We were talking about earlier, Tucker Salon down the street, and that is going to Barbara O'Grady. Barbara, woo, woo. And this last one is perfect timing, either for your mom or your grandma or something. This beautiful orchid. This is also from Greg. Thank you so much, Greg. This is going to Cappy Paulson. Is Cappy still here? There you are. Cappy, awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know there was so much information and it could lead you down a dark hole of trying to figure it all out tonight, which is probably not going to happen, but I highly encourage you to connect with any of the individuals that spoke tonight, whether it's now or you set up a consultation so you can actually sit down and just start to get into the nitty gritty of what you're looking to do. They're all going to be here for a little while tonight. I'm not going to say all night, but they're going to be here for a little while to answer some more of those questions and have some more dialogue with you. But I really appreciate you being here tonight. You will, like I said at the beginning, receive a follow-up email from us with all the slides so you can dig deep into those all in your own time and ask yourself those questions and put those questions to paper so you can ask those with your consultations. And I think that's it. I want to say thank you so much to Arturo, to Gray, Leona, Helen, Kendra for all being here, for putting all your time, not just into tonight, but this ongoing program. And with that, we are done. Grab some food, grab a beer, grab a glass of wine, and a water back, and we'll be on your way.